here's a little rig I've been using a lot lately. It's called the Naked Chod Rig. The reason I like to use a Naked Chod Rig is for concealment purposes. I always use it on fluorocarbon mainline. So obviously we all know fluorocarbon is it just disappears, and it's so invisible underwater. It's just the way forward for me. And a lot of places nowadays, lead core, as we all know, it can become dangerous in the wrong hands and if set up incorrectly. So the Naked Chod is a good way of getting around any sort of lead core or leader bands, and you can still use the Chod Rig in that sort of situation. So this rig is ideal for a weedy type venue, a silty type venue with like a bottom that's not clean, that you can present over weed. You can present it in silt, any sort of blanket weed, and depending on how far you've got your backstop set, it can penetrate into any sort of debris and rubbish. So the pop-up will sit above any sort of weed and silt and any sort of debris on the bottom. First of all, we start with a small lead. The smallest lead you can get away with really is ideal when you're playing a fish on the Chod Rig. You don't really want a big heavy lead, because everything slides down to the bottom. You don't really want a big heavy lead by the fish's mouth, because it's easy for the lead pulling away against the hook. It could come out at any moment. So try and use the smallest lead you could possibly use. And then we have like a little sleeve system just to keep everything nice and neat at the end. And next we have a bead, which is it's a tungsten impregnated bead. Just eradicates any need to use shrink tube and the little beads that like slide over shrink tube. It just eradicates that. Next we come to the rig. Obviously you've got to have the most buoyant bait you could possibly use. I usually use a corkball pop-up. So if you're, some of the venues that we're fishing these days, the rig could stay out for sort of 24, even 48 hours sometimes. So you want that buoyancy all the time. It's just a normal chod setup with a size 11 ring swivel. It's a nice big size 6 hook with an out-turned eye, which is important for the stiff bristle filament that we're using here. Because I am actually using a corkball pop-up and it is so buoyant, is to have, obviously you can test it in the margins before you cast out, is to have a nice big blob of putty just to hold everything down, nice and pinned to the bottom. And then next we have another tungsten bead. So depending on the depth of the debris on the bottom, you can have that set to whichever depth that you want really. I usually cast out, and if I pull back a bit of weed, I usually try and measure or get a rough estimate of how long the actual weed is, and that will dictate how far back up the line I will put the bead. And there you have it, the Naked Chod Rig. Ready to nail any big carp that's just about to take your bait.